Roxo Media House.
Signal 51 is police code for a call for an investigation. The Signal 51 Chronicles are stories of crime in the Southwest told by retired Fort Worth Police Sergeant Jake White and veteran investigative journalist John Henry.
We're rolling at the Roxo Media House studios. I'm Jake White, co-host of Signal 51 Chronicles, Fort Worth's only true crime podcast. Today, ordinarily, my other co-host John Henry and I are telling stories of crime in and around Fort Worth. Historical, present day. We dive into the stories and we see ultimately if we can solve them or look for the intrigue in these cases. But from time to time, we also focus on issues that are relevant now. So one of the issues that has continually come to the surface, whether it's in the newspaper, talking to people, or on the news, the list goes on, is an alarming rise in fentanyl overdose deaths in and around Fort Worth and throughout the nation. So today we assembled a roundtable of people with different experiences and different backgrounds. Our goal today is to educate, make people aware of the problem, and also identify some warning signs. Obviously, for any parent, a friend who perhaps has a opioid-based addiction, teachers, anyone in the education field, and the list goes on. This is important because one of the things that we're going to highlight is what it looks like, how it's consumed, and why it's so lethal. Why has this issue come to the surface? So I pulled some quick stats, and you guys might be familiar with these. So 2021, I found that over 100,000 people died from drug-related overdose deaths. 100,000 people in 1 year. That does not count the amount of people who overdosed that did not die. Maybe they had Narcan administered or something like that. There's no count on that. So who knows how many that is. 2021, about 5,000 Texans died from drug overdoses. Fentanyl is the number one cause of OD deaths in the U.S. presently. It's kind of alarming, and it's new. 3 of us up here have drug investigation experiences. And to the best of my knowledge, to the best of my memory, to the best of my experience, there's never been anything like this, right? Drug overdoses are not something that's new to law enforcement, but at the level that they're on now, it's alarming. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by giving a brief introduction with everybody. So in the middle is Sergeant Russell Johnson, retired Fort Worth PD. I had the pleasure, opportunity, the experience to work for Russell for many years at Fort Worth PD in our narcotics unit. We had the opportunity to train probably 1,000 cops in the 10 years that we taught at the academy.
Oh, at least.
At least.
'Cause I taught for 23 years.
Yep. And I was down there for 10. You left how long, retired how long ago?
End of 2018.
Into 2018. Okay. To Russell's right is JP. JP is a drug investigator in the area. This is the go-to guy for fentanyl investigations, hands down. A guy that has in-depth knowledge that most cops don't get. He has experience that most cops don't get. We're going to let you talk about some of the trends in a little bit.
All right.
And last but not least is a very, very special guest. I don't want to do a disservice to your story. All right. And I want you to speak from the heart in a little bit. But with us, we have Stephanie Hellstern. And again, I'm going to let her tell her story. I don't want to minimize it. All right. So what I want to do first, I want to look at this from the perspective of a broad scope or a broad-based level and kind of start at that national trend. So I want to start with Russell and kind of give us your background. Tell us what you do now.
Okay, back when I was a sergeant in narcotics, you were there. In 2013-ish, we were having issues with false positives on some heroin testing we were doing. And that's mainly due to the heat in Texas. So I started looking around for a better option. I came across this machine. It's called a True Narc. It's made by Thermo Fisher Scientific. And I got a hold of one of their guys, and it was brand new, brand spanking new. And in 2014, they sent me a test machine. It was not on the market yet to sell. So we used it in Fort Worth for about a year, maybe a little less, but about a year. And in order to use the machine, they wanted all the data we collected because we test a lot of dope in Fort Worth. Let's be honest. It's a hub for just about everything that comes across the border. So once we tested it, and I tested several of the machines, right, as we have to do in the city. This was by far, hands down, the best as far as field cops go. So we ended up purchasing several to use, and I've been using one since basically the end of 2013 to know how it really works. In 2018, I retired, and I started training for the company because I was fortunate. I was right place, right time. Had the background, the knowledge, the expertise with the machine and with dope in general after having spent 15 years in narcotics, that they wanted me to train for them because it's a new machine. And look, let's be honest, cops don't like new stuff. They don't understand it. We don't like change at all. So with the company, they wanted cops to train cops. It's a huge company, but they kept this very in-house. So when I started training, there was me and two other guys. And basically now, other than some special occasions, there's only three of us that train everywhere in the United States. Every police department, sheriff's office. I've trained DEA, HSI, Department of Homeland Security, DEA. I've said DEA, didn't I?
You did.
Because I've trained them several times. FBI. Everybody has these machines now. So we go all over the United States and we train. There's one that has the whole Northeast and trains the whole Northeast up there, and he's still a current narcotics sergeant up in and around Boston. Okay. And then there's a retired DEA agent that trains all of the West Coast. And then I train basically everything in the middle with Florida and any place else that we have to go. So I really became more educated with things other than heroin, cocaine, meth, all the opioids, because that is nationally, that's the problem. Texas, we're unique. We're unique in Texas because we get the bulk that comes across the border from the cartels. And where we are, where it comes up in the hub into Fort Worth and Dallas area, is we get the Los Zetas and the Gulf Cartel and La Familia. We get all their dope. And bulk, what we get is we get bulk meth, whether it's powder, ice, or liquid. We get bulk cocaine, and we get bulk black tar heroin. Well, up in the north, they don't really know what black tar heroin is because they don't see it. They don't see it hardly at all. So because of that, and the way opioids work, heroin is our main base here for anyone who wants to use that type. That's why we were so far behind the curve with what they were getting up in the Northeast. So going down the West Coast where you have the Sinaloa cartel and they supply that basic area going up that way, they also ship and come around, and a lot of the Northeast dope comes from the Sinaloa cartel. So they were early in the development and distribution of fentanyl. So the main distribution started basically in California and up in the Northeast, coming from New York and coming down, because they didn't have the option of the heroin. They were getting really, really, we'll call it's weak heroin. I mean, by the time it got up there, it had been, okay, what's the proper term? Stepped on so many times that the purity was not there for the high they wanted. So the fentanyl came in. And this machine, we didn't have any test kits for fentanyl. I mean, all three of us have used what we call wet tests, where we take a sample of the drugs, we put it in a little pouch, we pop some ampules, and we go, okay, Dominus Omnis, it's pink over blue, we'll call that cocaine, right? We didn't have anything for fentanyl. They have since developed it. But the machine continues to operate and grow with and if you're not aware, fentanyl is not just fentanyl. Fentanyl is, there are analogs of fentanyl. And the DEA will reschedule every time a new analog comes in. So this machine currently will test 42 different analogs of fentanyl.
So is that like 42 varieties?
42 varieties
Okay.
of fentanyl. And it'll test it all without touching the dope. Okay. What the machine does is the machine basically takes a chemical structure of the substance that's in front of it, and it just spits it out based off of that chemical structure, and it tells you what it is. So if I hold it up to a kilo of Coke, I'm going to press the buttons and do everything, and it's just going to come back and it's going to say cocaine HCl for powder cocaine. I can hit a crack rock and it'll say cocaine base for crack. Okay. So with the fentanyl, every fentanyl that's on the market, except for a brand new one that comes on, then the DEA gets it, they break it down, they add it to the federal analog statutes. And when that is added to the statutes, that goes over to the company, and they include it and update the machine. Now, this machine is all over the United States now. Like I said, I've trained every alphabet there is, plus I don't even know how many I've trained. DPS in Texas, okay? They just ordered some more. They are now up to 81 of these machines that DPS has. I just got through with the training this summer in North Carolina, where they purchased 30 machines to disperse throughout the state. Everywhere I go, it's just everybody wants these machines because it is so easy to identify the fentanyl.
So real quick, that machine, I mean, I've had the opportunity to use it before, and I mean, in essence, it's a point and shoot device.
It's a point and shoot
right?
device.
I mean, it almost, I don't know what I can say and what I can't say. I don't know.
You can say whatever you want to,
so,
Jake. I'll correct you if you're wrong and add to it.
Okay, the best I can tell, it works basically like a laser going in there, right?
There is a laser.
Okay. And so that's what gathers the data from the substance, goes back to the machine,
Correct.
compares it to a known database or known substance, and
Correct.
says, here's what you have.
Yeah, it's a pure sample database.
So I think one of the advantages, and I know JP can probably attest to this, one of the advantages of a machine like that, and we all can, is you're hands off to
Yes.
a certain degree, right? I mean, there is no, if you remember back, 10, 15 years ago when it was powdered heroin and it comes in those little clear capsules, and you'd have to break the capsule open and scoop a little bit into that little pouch.
We were very hands-on in the day.
Very
with
hands-on.
everything we had to test.
But it wasn't as lethal, right?
Correct.
I mean, because
except for PCP.
Well, of course, but in terms of a powdered substance, right? I mean, I think to this day, we're still, if you had a large-scale fentanyl seizure that was pure powder, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and I don't know that, I don't want to go too far off in the weeds, but that response is full-blown from the equipment to the consequences are grave. And so whenever we can come up with something that can minimize the exposure to the officers, to the citizens at large, I mean, it's a game changer,
Oh,
right? I mean, we've all seen those nightmare videos where the cop opens a bag of dope and then next thing you know, he's on the ground, lights out.
Right.
You know, luckily most of the time they have Narcan or whatever. What's the, I don't want to call it.
Naloxone?
What is it?
Naloxone?
Naloxone. Yes. I just knew the Narcan name of it. So that's an outstanding tool. Now, is that tool available? Is it just specific to law enforcement, government?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Military and law enforcement, crime labs.
Crime labs.
Matter of
okay.
fact, our own crime lab, City
Right.
of Fort Worth, has 2 of them
Okay.
that they utilize within the crime lab because of the accuracy. So here's the difference, right? On the wet test that we used when we were very hands-on, right? Half the time we didn't even wear gloves back in the day. All that's by the wayside. Those tests were not accurate. That it was a representation, and we could base something off of probable cause. So we called it presumptive positive,
Yep.
right? So here's the accuracy of this machine, based off of the evidentiary rules in Texas. We as cops, we can't do a confirmatory test on anything because we don't have the credentials to do it. As in, we are not lab people, right? We are not forensic scientists.
Right.
So if I take this out and I'm on, and I stick it on a kilo of cocaine, I stick it on there, I don't have to touch it, it comes back, tells me cocaine HCl. It's still presumptive positive, but here's the difference. The accuracy is 0 false positives and 0 false negatives, basically 100% accurate. So if I hand it to, if we call a forensic scientist from the crime lab out to the scene, and I hand him this machine, and he tests that same kilo of cocaine, that is a confirmatory test. He can use it as a confirmatory test, which means our probable cause is that much better for anything we do. So we no longer have to touch the dope. We just have to have it packaged to where we can see it and get to it. A plastic baggie, glass, cellophane, clear packing tape, okay? Whatever we can, if we can see it, then I can get to it and I can test it.
So from a budgetary, a fiscal perspective, then, if that's the case, then, and I don't want to say completely substitute that for a laboratory analysis.
Oh, no, you can't.
But
yeah.
to a certain degree, I guess that, I mean, is that what you're saying? It could fill that void if need be?
It can. And our crime lab uses it because it's basically the same technology that is in every crime lab, which is called a mass spectrometer. Okay, and they use mass spectrometers for years and years for confirmatory testing of what's in the dope. And this is a street version, a smaller street version of that, which doesn't do as many substances, but everything we come across, it does.
Okay.
So it's still presumptive positive, but it's 100% accurate
Okay.
for all
What we're going to do
purposes.
is we're going to provide some information in terms of website so people can read more about that, actually look into that. I would assume that you can probably find information on YouTube about it, and the list goes on.
Maybe.
We'll check into that, but we're definitely going to provide some more information on that. And I think that for anybody in law enforcement or any citizen who wants to urge their police department to get something like that, what do you know the cost of it?
Yes.
Okay.
The cost of a machine is, give or take, ballpark, $27,000.
Okay. All right. Well, that way, it like I said, that's something where that's something that whether it be a municipal government, a county government, state, federal agency, whatever, that does not have that, it's going to be something worth looking into for sure.
Yeah.
It's a time saver. But one thing I want to talk to you about, so you have the opportunity to go across the nation and talk to cops across the nation who investigate drug crimes. And I think your knowledge of fentanyl seems to be a little bit more robust, maybe certainly more robust than mine. Kind of give me an idea. I mean, I think you touched on a little bit in terms of it almost seemed like a filler, if you will. So the black tar heroin's not making it to the Northeast,
Right.
so they find something to fill in. Safe to say?
Correct.
Okay.
And they'll also take where it started, and what they were doing was they were taking that basically the brown powder heroin, right? That as it goes up north, it gets cut more and more because everybody wants a piece of the pie and a profit. So they started adding fentanyl to that small portion of heroin so that it's a heroin fentanyl mix. And initially, the first deaths had a lot to do with the heroin fentanyl mix because they were buying it as heroin, not knowing that the fentanyl was in there. The problem is that with fentanyl, and I'll tell you this is very, very short, but fentanyl has legitimate uses in the hospital, right? You can do that for pain, severe pain, whatever. But when it's on the street, and especially when it comes from Mexico, we're going to talk about, eventually, I'm assuming we're going to talk about some tabs and different forms that it comes in, right? So a lethal dose of fentanyl is 2 to 2.5 milligrams, okay? 2 to 2.5 milligrams. Now, the lowest dose of oxycodone you can get, which is highly abused, and it also comes from Mexico or anywhere else, the minimum it has in it is 5 milligrams, okay? So this machine will find 5 milligrams of oxycodone all day long in the smallest amounts they come in. But a lethal dose of fentanyl is 2 to 2.5 milligrams. Here's the problem. The cartels don't really regulate like a pharmaceutical company would on the amount of fentanyl that goes into each tab. So by analysis across the United States, what the range has been is 1.5 milligrams up to 5 milligrams. Once you get above 2.5 and you're pushing 3 milligrams, that is lethal. You take it, you die. It's lethal. So once you have that 5 milligrams on some of them, I don't know enough about that end to where you would have enough Narcan to get somebody to the hospital.
Right.
Okay. So that's the real problem is there's no regulation of how much fentanyl there is in each tab. So it's a crapshoot. I mean, it is a crapshoot. So you don't know. And it's not whether, I built up a tolerance, right? You can take fentanyl and it's been at 1.5 milligrams and your body may be used to that. But if you get a pill that's got 3 milligrams in it, it doesn't work that way.
So there is no tolerance.
No, there's no tolerance built up in your system to that amount of fentanyl. So this machine, the reason I like it so well, right? Because I don't work for the company. I just teach for the company. I wouldn't teach if the machine wasn't the bomb diggity, right?
Right.
So in everything that it'll do. Now, it has its limitations, but for what we're trying to attack, for cops, you can identify this in the field. And if you just find some white powder somewhere, I've got a piece of paper right here, Jake, that will show. I don't know. I can hold it up or whatever.
We'll upload it.
Okay.
And
so basically, what this piece of paper shows is that it has a picture of powder fentanyl, it has a picture of powder carfentanil, powder cocaine, and then some new ones that if we want to touch on, we can, but they're nitazines. And there's two different ones because they're the main ones on the market now. And if you see those, and we run a warrant in a house, right, and you see a small bag of the powder, you have no idea which one it is. None. Now, whoever the cop is there can just pick up that bag, point and shoot the machine, and it'll tell you straight away what it is. And then do I need to be extra careful? What do we do? Okay, let's put this aside. And it's so quick. I mean, it identifies whatever it is between 15 and 40 seconds, right? Depending on if it's cut and there's cutting agents in there, whatever. The more pure, the faster it is. So 15 to 40 seconds and you're done. I mean, that's phenomenal. If we'd have had this tool 10, 15 years ago, and I had the knowledge that I have now about this stuff, it'd have been a godsend to narcotics all over this United States.
Yeah. No, that's outstanding, and we're going to come back and touch on some of that. I wanted to get to JP real quick. You mentioned a term tab, and I want JP to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. So basically, with you, I think you have, like I said, I mean, you're the subject matter expert at a local level, and that's important for the viewers, for the listeners, because again, we want to educate, we want to make people aware of, and we want people to know what warning signs to look for. And I think one of the scariest things about this is it looks like something that it's not, right?
Right.
It's counter.
Absolutely.
I mean, they look like a counterfeit prescription pill, which is crazy, right? I mean, and listen, I'm, kids are going to be kids, right?
Absolutely.
There's no sometimes you might, God forbid, you might find a little dime sack of weed in a kid's closet. You might find a water bottle or a vodka bottle that's watered down or something like that, right? Kids are
Right.
going to do kid stuff.
Cheese back in the day.
I'm not condoning any of that by any stretch of the imagination. But the concern is if a kid thinks, hey, I'm taking an alprazolam or I'm taking a hydrocodone or something like that, and I'm peer pressured into that, and the result is death.
Absolutely.
I mean, that
Stakes are high.
they can be no higher.
No.
No, they
And
cannot.
I think that's the primary concern. And it's like, we got to figure out how to do something better, right? Whether that's through education, whether that's through enforcement activity, whether that's a hybrid approach, whatever that is, we got to figure something out.
Right.
I mean, we go through the stats, 100,000 people, 5,000 Texans, and that's just what's reported. I mean, I think we could probably all agree it's probably higher than that. So with JP, kind of tell us, like, locally, what do we see? What do we see in and around Fort Worth?
Yeah, for sure. In the DFW area, the majority of what we're seeing is the pressed pills that look like the M30 oxycodone pills. That's the majority of what we're seeing. We're seeing them everywhere. Pretty much every poly drug dealer that we're dealing with is pushing these pills. Prices for them will range anywhere from as low as $2 a pill up to $25 a pill, depending on how many you're buying and how many times it's been bought and sold before it gets to the person you're buying from, and the relationship, of course. But that by far is what we're seeing.
So what are from a so you talk about the M30s. I mean, do we see it here locally most often in a pill form?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's being pushed into other things as well. Your meth, heroin, and coke. Here in this area, around DFW, I would say the majority of it is the pill form.
Okay,
For sure.
I may be wrong in this assumption. I don't know. We all know what assuming does. To me, though, it seems like it has no boundaries, right? Meaning, no matter the neighborhood, no matter the kid, no matter the age, it can touch them all.
It can, and it has. It absolutely has. There's nothing that defines who's going to get their hands on these pills, whether it's a middle school kid from a predominant area, a 45-year-old.
Right.
That's I mean, there is no boundaries. We worked cases from all age ranges, all ethnicities, all backgrounds, financial status. It touches everyone. I mean, we had, there's famous cases of it. Athletes, football players, singers, performers. I mean, it's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. And a lot of times, especially the younger kids, they don't know what they're getting into. Right. They're hanging out with friends or at a party or whatever, and they get handed a pill. And sometimes they just take it because they are kids and they are going to experiment and have fun.
So, on this show, I mean, the kids are kind of the center, the theme of this, right? And
Right.
protecting them and making sure that we can do anything we possibly can that this doesn't happen again. So kind of walk me through where are they buying it?
Sure. So, and once again, that ranges everywhere. It could be somebody at school, could be a good friend. But a lot of these kids are turning to social media apps. They look to social media apps, Snapchat, Instagram, Radiate. Pretty much if it's a social media app where they can talk to somebody, they can find somebody on there selling this stuff.
Is it on those social media sites? Is it a concealed behavior? Or
No.
Wide open?
They blatantly post this. They'll post their prices. They'll post their products. They'll send you messages daily on what they have available. Shops open. They'll tell you to come through. They'll post this stuff on their social media sites just for anyone to see. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
And JP, I'm assuming based off of that, because of the technology now, we no longer have to be, I'm scared to go buy dope because I'm going to go in a terrible neighborhood and I got to go up to a dope house and I may get shot, because now they have Cash App, Venmo. You can, there's no regulation. You can Cash App somebody.
Absolutely.
And they'll send it to you.
They'll deliver.
And I know it comes through the mail because I've trained I don't know how many U.S. postal inspectors, and they just get pounds and pounds and pounds of bags of M30 tabs.
Absolutely.
Coming through the mail.
Absolutely. Comes through the mail, UPS. They'll send it any way that they can, but they will literally deliver it to your door like an Uber charge, or what is the?
It's like ordering pizza.
Like ordering pizza. Grubhub, and they'll say, this is the price. If you want it delivered, it's $10 more.
Yeah.
And they'll bring it to your front door.
So I think one of the other things, we can relate to this, right? We understand the violence associated with drugs. And I think it's safe to say that the vast majority of violent crimes are centered around that drug trade. Now we're looking at it from a perspective where if you've got a 17-year-old kid selling fentanyl, let's say he's making $1,000 a week. Again, just an assumption here. However, I don't know that most 17-year-old kids, the ones who don't conceal their activity, they're certainly not going to conceal their income. So now all of a sudden, they've got $10,000 in their bedroom. They've got $8,000 wherever. What are they showing off, right? Wads and stacks of money. Well, guess what they become now? They become the next victim, the next robbery victim, the next murder victim. Should it come as any surprise that we have a 100% increase in murders just in Fort Worth? Probably not. Like I said, I mean, at some point we have to figure out what can we do different. And look, I'm not a proponent that says that the police solve all crime, right? I mean, that's it. Crime is so much bigger. It's a societal issue that everybody has to work. The society and the police have to work together.
Sure.
But the other thing that I think is important is the police can't. Now is not the time to scale back.
No.
Right?
No.
When we have this drug alone on the streets of Fort Worth, on the streets of Tarrant County, on the streets of Texas, on the streets of the U.S., now is not the time to scale back and say, well, hey, we're going to have to kind of figure out something different. Like I said, I'm not one that opposes change. I understand concerns that society has. I understand that there are things that police can do differently. There's no doubt about it. But if something that is out there, 2 milligrams, 2.5 milligrams, and a kid takes it thinking, hey, I'm taking a Xanax, but it's not a Xanax.
Nope.
And it causes them their life or costs them their life.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like full speed ahead, like get on top of this and do something about this. And I know that you guys are, and this is no, I'm not saying this from the street cop perspective. Okay. And you know me well enough to know where I come from in saying that. It's got to get better. Right. So we're going to come back to a couple things, but I want to get to Stephanie Hellstern. Like I said, I introduced you by name, and that's as far as I'm going to go, because I think if people want to know what courage, what selfless looks like, they can look at you. There's few that can convey the story that you're going to tell us about. And I commend you for being here, and I commend you for doing that. I think that it's going to have a bigger impact throughout your life that you probably can't measure. So I think that's important, and I appreciate you coming. So kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So I'm here because I lost my only child at 16 years old. He thought he was trying a Percocet pill for the first time. It was not just laced with fentanyl. It was pure fentanyl. So it was a pure fake counterfeit pill. He died with 12 milligrams in his system. So that would kill 6 people. So I think that's the biggest thing is that, you know, he was talking about all these ways we make it, and they're not pharmaceutical people. So, you know, like he said, fentanyl does have a very good, for hospitals. Like my best friend had the epidural and fentanyl was in it, and she looked at me like, what? Fentanyl? And I was like, it's okay. There's an anesthesiologist here. They know how to administer that, you know, that kind of thing. But from like the drug side of the streets, they are not pharmaceutical people. They don't know how much is going into it. So if they have it, you know, all displayed and they're putting fentanyl, mixing it in, you don't know if this little pill right here that makes a tab of it, if that has none, and then this does have 2, and then this has 1, you know. And so, like I said, it's really, really bad right now. And one of the things that when I go and publicly speak about it and throw events is I talk about it's right here. I mean, if I could lose my son, and I lived in White Settlement area, very nice area, lived in, you know, a park, you know, all the nice things of a housing area, and for it to happen to my son at only 16, that should be a wake-up call. And my son didn't have a lot of prior of showing. I know he was hanging out with certain kids, and I was like, okay, this is just a phase. Like, I mean, I listened to rap music when I was younger, like never smoked or did anything at that age, but, you know, later on in college, you know, so I was like, okay, just praying through it, trying to figure out, okay, he'll get through this. And my biggest message is there's no learning from mistakes right now. Like, there's none. Like, you can't even take that one pill or take or even smoke weed, because it's getting laced with that too, or even it's getting so bad that I just put on I started a nonprofit in honor of my son called Kyle Still Speaks, and it's all on social media, and anytime anything locally is going on, I put it on there, as well as I publish it anything nationally going on. So my biggest thing is I show that they're making fake Adderall. I mean, there was 2 cases in Ohio recently. The most prestigious kids that would never do anything, honor roll, they just wanted to stay up and try to, you know, to take their test the next day, and the Adderall had fentanyl in it. So they lost 2 people up there in Ohio. And not only Adderall, but it's Tylenol 3s. So they're making, you know, fake Tylenol or headache medicine, anything pain related, I guess is kind of what I'm learning. And not only that, but gummy bears. There was a 11-year-old that brought them to school, and luckily they were at school, but I'm pretty sure they got from the parents and thought, oh, these gummy bears, and gave it to the child, their friends, and started ODing on it. So luckily they were at school, because if they were by themselves, kind of in the situation with my son, I don't know everything behind it. I wish now that I have cameras at my house, that'd be another thing I would tell parents, is to have cameras outside, inside, like outside the front and backyard. I found Kyle in my backyard. So I literally came home after it's tax season, came back, looked all throughout the house, and I couldn't find him anywhere. And something in my spirit told me to go out towards the backyard. And if I had not turned on the light and opened that back door, I would not have seen him on the ground. And I don't know if someone tried to cover it either. Like, there's just a lot of things that are not making sense, but of what is starting to come out. Somebody on Snapchat saw that his friends poured out Percocets in honor of him. So there's just like little things that are kind of coming out that I'm realizing that, okay, this is what it was. This is what, and I finally had to get to a point where if I focus too much on all these little details, I wasn't going to be doing what I needed to. And my biggest thing is to warn parents and warn schools. The biggest thing right now for me is Narcan is very hard to get. Even as a nonprofit, I'm getting it through National Alliance of Mental Illness in Tarrant County. They were helping me because I used to work for them. And then I was getting it through my nonprofit and then one other nonprofit. And we're not even able to get any of that. I was getting at least like 100 something a month. And basically there was a funding from UTA of NarcanMorePlease.com, and they don't have the funding for it. So now when I'm going and speaking at schools, if I have some, I ask the police officers there, do you have any? They don't even have it. So I try to leave them and the nurses some, because what's happening is there's all these different challenges is what I'm finding out. Like right before my son passed, there was a Skittles challenge. I don't know if you had heard of that, but the Skittles packs had pills in them, and they were just taking Skittles, and sometimes you didn't know if they're getting basically not using a bad word, but getting messed up in class, so there's all these different challenges on TikTok, all these things that you don't know when the next time somebody's gonna be trying or doing anything. So I think the other biggest message too is I really feel like we got to change the mindset. We call it, I'm with the Fentanyl Awareness Coalition, FAC, and we talk about the old mindset. The old mindset was the druggy person that is on heroin with the, what is that called? I'm talking about the little thing around their arm and, and the needle. Yeah, thank you. The needle, and they're in the alleyway. Well, right now, that's the old mindset of overdoses. The new mindset is the paradigm shift that Michael Gray created is that new paradigm is fentanyl poisonings with how much it is. We need to change the mindset. This is something that with 2 milligrams kills somebody and they're not knowing they're taking it. And so this is the everyday person that's getting poisoned right now. Right. So I think when we change that perspective of, yes, there's still going to always, there was since 2013 and all that, there's always a linear, and we are always doing that education awareness, and it was starting to go down. But 2013 is when it really skyrocketed of fentanyl was introduced, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. So I think it needs to get to the point where it's publicly everywhere. Like, we don't see any commercials about, fentanyl, be careful of this fake counterfeit pill. I mean, I'm calling out the pharmaceutical places too, because there's people making fake things off of their stuff and nobody's publicly putting it out there of, hey, watch out. Don't take something unless it's prescribed to you. That's my biggest message, because a lot of times at parties, they'll just put all their pills and their bottles in it, and they're like, oh, take one. So you don't know behind closed doors what people are doing. When I talk to parents, a lot of the parents I've noticed will start like turning away, and then I have to remind them, hey, how many of you right now, I said I had a headache or cramps, how many of you women would take out your purses right now and start taking out your pill bottles? It's very, very common that they start taking them out. Well, I don't know behind closed doors what that person is doing. So I will not take anything from anybody. And that's what I tell schools and kids, that unless you got it from the store or you got it from your doctor or your parent or the nurse gave it to you, do not touch it, because you just don't know what's in it.
I think one of the things you said that kind of freaked me out was no learning from mistakes, right? No. It's gone now, which is horrible. And I think one of the things that, maybe we've seen this, I don't know, but hearing these stories, what's to say one party, one batch, one bottle with 10 of them doesn't result in 10 deaths like that? Yeah. I mean, it's alarming. I mean, it's frightening. I mean, I don't even know how to really summarize how bad that is. I mean, but it's an issue. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Florida. I remember during spring break, it was
eight in a weekend in Florida. Yeah,
one small county. And I knew it was a matter of time when, and that's why I was we need to get out there before spring breaks, during school, before school, just trying to bring awareness that if it's not something I'll be honest, my son got it from his friend. Mm-hmm. He thought he could buy weed from his friend. Not that I condone doing drugs or anything like that, right. But he wanted to buy weed and his friend didn't have it and gave him that. So, I mean, it could be as close as thinking I can trust my drug dealer, I can trust my friend, but really, who can you trust? Like that's one of the things when I go and speak, I'm like, are you going to trust the person to your left or the person to the right to make your decisions for you? No. So make your own decisions.
So you're talking to a mom with a 15-year-old or a dad with a 16-year-old. What do you tell them?
I tell them to look for several things. One of the things that I noticed in Kyle was he was stopping to have initiative in certain things that he was doing before. He used to be really active in football, different things. He used to like gaming. I noticed he was doing less of those kind of things and more secluded in his room. And then a lot of my biggest sign now is he would say he was going to the park. And what I'm realizing is kids go to the park and that's where everybody is okay. You think they're going to go play basketball or, go swimming or do anything or feed the dogs. I don't know. Like you think they're doing what's right and really they're not. They're meeting for, hey, I'm going to buy weed here or I'm going to meet up here or I'm going to smoke. So even if they're not buying it, they're maybe going to go smoke or do different things. And if the kids don't know, then they're going to. So that's one of the things I say for a parent is, if you're not going to talk to them, someone else is going to, and it might be the last chance that you get that opportunity. And that's what a lot of parents, I have a group of 40, not only parents, grandparents, and people that lost their spouses to this. And a lot of them wish they had known about it. So now that you're hearing about it, and that's why I tell parents is as young as 6 or 7, you should be talking to your kids. I mean, remember the days when you would talk about when you went Halloween and trick-or-treating? We would tell them, hey, until you brought your candy back and I inspected it, the same kind of initiative. We need to talk to them that fentanyl is being put in everything. So even if you, from a 6-year-old, you don't want to say exactly the word of drugs, you can at least have the conversation of, hey, don't be taking anything from anybody, basically, unless you got it from me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, like I said, I can't thank you enough for coming here. I mean, I think it's remarkable when people take that tragedy and they don't just conceal it inside. I mean, they get that message out there, because at the end of the day, if greater good comes from it, then, like I said, it's going to be hard to quantify the impact, right? And I think that's the phenomenal story of it. So you mentioned foundation, KyleStillSpeaks.org. Okay. Are there any mechanisms to donate? Anything that society can do to contribute?
I'm working on that part right now.
Okay.
It's I do marketing, but I do it marketing for others. So I'm trying to do it for myself and the nonprofit. And I'm working on that part right now. But right now, what we're trying to do is do events. So like we had an event in June. We have several events in August because, like I mentioned, National Fentanyl Awareness and Prevention Day is on August 21st. So there's a lot of local events that are this month, right in time for school, going back to school. I think there's one on August 31st in Denton. There's several of them. I've been putting them on my page too, of the ones that are coming up. So if anybody wants to see on Kyle Still Speaks on Facebook or Instagram, I'm trying to put those flyers on there. So I think just even taking your kids to it, because a lot of these are community events. So, I mean, we have bounce houses, snow cones, things like that. So even if they just bring their kid and then they see, I mean, all of us have an A-frame sign. It's a sign about this big, and it has our kid on there. And I think when other people see a face that, I mean, my son, when you see him, looks like every other normal kid. Great smile, great personality, you know. And so I know that us doing that and showing our loved ones that we lost, that people can say, oh my goodness, this could happen to me. And I think that's the biggest thing for people to see is this is happening everywhere. And it's not just the drug addicts or people that are on the street and homeless.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that. I mean, we talked about kids a lot on here. All of us have seen the adult that on the surface, you probably would not think that they struggle with addiction. And again, you go back, I mean, that statement, no learning from mistakes. I mean, that applies to a 42-year-old, that applies to a 37-year-old. I mean, this stuff comes on like a thief in the night. And I think that's important. I mean, because again, you know, let's face it, there are spouses who are dealing with this issue. There are parents of adult children who are dealing with this issue, grandparents, and the list goes on. I mean, I think it's important for everyone to have an understanding. And one of the things that we want to do on this show, again, we're going to upload some pictures of what it looks like, kind of recapping. When we talk about fentanyl, we're talking about a counterfeit pill, whether it's a M30, a Tylenol, Adderall, anything, right? If you don't know where the pill came from, don't take it. And I hope if people listen to nothing else on this show, listen to that, right? Understand that, because again, there is no coming back. And I mean, it's phenomenally, I mean, I'm baffled by the fact that 2 milligrams of something that is that prevalent kills so many people. I mean, it's horrible.
So would you want me to give you some stats of how close this? So this is something I use because a lot of people are like, oh no, that's just 1 or 2 kids. So in 2019, so I lost my son in 2020. Just in Tarrant County, the year before my son died, there was only 9 deaths in 2019. The year my son died in Tarrant County in 2020 was 95. 2021, there was 175. And already in 2022, this year, we already are what we were last year. That's just in Tarrant County here locally. So the numbers, I mean, from 9 to 95 in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
So it's just double, tripling, quadrupling. It's just getting worse and worse.
But here's what you see across the United States because of that. What you have, and look, we three have seen it happen to even cops on the job.
Mm-hmm.
You get injured, and they become addicted to opioids. A lot of them is going to be the oxycodones, right? And they get hooked. Well, when the doctor stops prescribing it, right? What do? You got to go find it. And you find it on the street.
We've seen it.
Yeah.
And now the problem is that the M30s are basically, they can be sold as Percocets, straight up oxycodones, just oxys in general, and they got the fentanyl in it, and it's just not forgiving. It's not that everybody's, they're hooked on the fentanyl. That's not the case. The case is, holy cow, they're hooked on something else, and the mimics, the counterfeits, look exactly like what it is that they're buying, and it's everywhere. A solution? I don't know. Control the borders? Can we do that? I don't know. We never have in the past. We couldn't stop the heroin from coming in, the cocaine from coming in. We couldn't stop anything. It's a business.
Yeah.
So now the big business coming across is the fentanyl, and it'll come across in the pill form, or it comes across, and I'm telling you how much comes across that border because I know from Border Patrol and from DEA down on the border that there is just kilos and kilos and thousands of kilos of powder fentanyl coming across, plus all the M30 tabs that are already there. So if it's coming across in the powder, it's getting pressed here by somebody, or it's split up. I've even seen it in liquid form coming across the border. So if you can get liquid fentanyl coming across the border and you just process it and you're just taking droplets, and you can put it, you could put liquid fentanyl as a droplet, kind of like LSD, right? You could put it on an actual M30 pill that's pharmaceutically made. It's mind-boggling that, and I don't know what to do.
I was going to say, with that, you could even put it in our water. So, I mean, a lot of parents right now, they've been doing a lot of graphics and billboards and all that kind of stuff. And it's right now, it's killing Americans. It's killing our next youth that's coming in. It's killing Americans right now. So it's a war against us right now.
JP, from the cop perspective, what does the citizenry do should they suspect someone is selling fentanyl, any illicit narcotic? What steps do they take?
Yeah, so depending on where you are and depending on how involved you want to get, you can call like your Crime Stoppers, make a complaint. A lot of people do it anonymously. It helps us tremendously if you're willing to actually speak to someone to further the investigation, because a lot of times the anonymous complaints don't really have all the information we need to actually get us started on that investigation. It may provide the foundation of it, but then like the next step that could be the key to getting us to where we need to be isn't there. So if you're willing to actually speak to somebody, leaving a way to get in touch with you on those would be awesome.
Real quick, and they can speak anonymously, right?
They can absolutely. They can absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And when you make a Crime Stoppers tip, it's not something that anyone other than that investigator is going to get. It's not something that's shared. It's not something that becomes public information. But speaking up is the first step. And whether you see that person selling them in person, you know somebody that's bought from them, you know their social media accounts. Social media is huge. If you can provide their social media accounts, that's huge. But actually having somebody at the end of that complaint to speak to pays dividends on getting something done. But truly that's the first step and probably the most important. If you're willing to just blatantly call down and say, I'll talk to whoever, this is my name, and leave your phone number, that's even better. But, that's what you're comfortable with is what you need to do there.
Don't just stand on the sidelines hoping somebody else will take care of the problem.
Right.
Though.
Right.
Well, guys, I greatly appreciate you guys coming in and sharing your experiences, and it's a wide range of experiences. And we will certainly provide links to your organization so So I appreciate it, and I just want to remind you guys to check us out at Signal 51 Chronicles on all of our social sites and on YouTube. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Roxo Media House.